Hello, welcome to your third tutorial on CSS. Today we'll talk about mainly box models and classes. So first off, let's go to the body and let's write the div tag. So write in div and close your div tag and open up the first div tag and give it an attribute called class and write an equal sign, 2 quotation marks, and write T1. To give our T1 some properties, we're going to use the internal style sheet, and as you can see, I already have my style tags in the head section. The first thing that I'll do is I'll type in a dot and the name of my selector, which is T1 in this case, and a curly brace, and let's close out curly brace. And let's say I want to give T1 some color, so let's go back here and type in text so we can visually see what's happening. Let's write the property color and a colon, and let's say I want my color to be a slightly pinkish color, so I'll type in light coral and let's save and refresh. And as you can see, we have our light coral text and it's tiny, so let's add some more size to it. Type in the font size property and let's give it 40 pixels and let's save and refresh. So let's also make it bold. So what I'll do is I'll type in the font weight property and let's write bold, and now our text should be bold. Here we go. The class selector selects elements with a specific class attribute, and to select elements with a specific class, we write a dot just before the name of the class. So the name of our class in this case was T1, and we put it here, and just before it we put a dot. So we can do the same exact thing with ID. So let's change div class to div ID. However, if we save and refresh, nothing will happen to our text and it will just stay in its original format. This is because for ID we have to put in a hashtag instead of the dot, so let's change it and let's save and refresh. And here we go, we have the same properties working for ID. So just a quick heads up, you don't really have to put a semicolon after your last property value, and as you can see I deleted it and it works perfectly fine. However, you do have to put it if you're going to write another property right after it. So let's continue. Let's talk about the main thing of this video, which is our CSS box model. And as you can see, CSS box model is made up of the margin, background color, background image, padding, border, transparent elements, and its content. So let's try to get a better understanding of this. Let's give our div, which is this, some width, height, and background properties. So let's type in width and I'll give it 400 pixels, and let's give it a height as well, and I will give this 300 pixels. Let's also make its background gray. For example, you can choose any color that you prefer, and if we save this and refresh our page, you can see that now we have this box. And so from this picture, the first thing is the margin, so let's get to it. In our code, let's write margin and let's write left. So as you probably know, a margin basically just gives us some extra space just before whatever we're gonna write or we're gonna make. So it extends the border area to include an empty area. And so let's write our margin left property and let's give our margin 50 pixels. So this is the amount of space that it will give it. So the size of 50 pixels, if that makes sense. So let's save and refresh, and you can see that now we have this margin just before our box. And we can change it to margin top as well. So let's change left with top and let's save, refresh, and you can see that now we have a margin from the top of 50 pixels. And we can have both at the same time as well. So let's duplicate it and let's write left here and let's change its size to 70 pixels. Save, refresh. And as you can see, from the top there's a margin of 50 pixels and from the left there's a margin of 70 pixels. So let's duplicate this and let's add a right margin as well. So type in right and let's give it 30 pixels. Save and refresh. So as you can see, nothing happened. This is because there's way too much space over here for us to be able to see it. So what we're going to do is we're gonna duplicate our div tag and we're gonna change T1 with T2, and we also need to add our T2 in our internal style sheet. So after T1, let's put a comma and let's write hashtag T2. Save and refresh. And as you can see, we now have two identical boxes on our web page. And just to tell them apart, let's write text1 over here and let's write text2 in this one. Save and refresh, and here we go. So just to give you another heads up, if we were to have the same values for both IDs, that is not recommended. Unless the IDs are different, it won't work. And if you were to have the same values, you'd have to change one of these IDs to class. So yeah, that was just a quick heads up that you should probably take note of. And so in our style tag, in the selector, after the comma, we added a T2. And as you can see, our boxes are underneath each other. So let's say I want this box to be right next to the first box. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna type in a property called float. And I'm gonna write left. Here we go, save and refresh. And so if we change the size of our window, you can see that it really did move to its right side. So this means that if it doesn't fit on our page, it will just move down. And so just for us to be able to see it without adjusting our tab size, let's change the width to 200. Save and refresh, and here we go. So we can see that through the margin left property, our box text1 is 70 pixel spaces away, and so is text2 from text1. So these two spaces are both 70 pixels in size. So now let's right click on our web page and click on inspect, and let's make this bigger just for now. So you should have this pop-up box, and let's make body visible. So let's click on expand all, and as you can see, this is basically what we've written in our file. And if we click on div ID T1, you'll notice that it highlights our text1 box. And if we click on div ID 2, it will highlight the second box. So on the right side of our pop-up box, we can see that we have this area for our properties. And so what we can do is we can change the sizes of our properties, so we can change the values. And so let's say I want the height to be less. What I do is I click on it and it highlights the value, and here we basically have an explanation of what we need to do. So it's either with the mouse wheel or up and down keys. I can use up and down and it will change its size on my web page. And so let's say I want the width to be a little bit smaller. Here we go, you can see that it changes. And let's say I want it bigger. Here we go, it's getting bigger. So let's just keep it at 190, for example. And so you can change the sizes directly from here to find sort of the best solution. And we can change colors as well. So let's say I want to change this gray, and let's say I want this purplish color. That's all I have to do. You just have to select it on this. And as you can see, we have hex value here as well. So just to make sure, the inspect element isn't permanent, it's temporary. So you only use it to find the perfect solution for your website or your web page. So let's get our file back. Here we go. And let's add some border properties. So let's add border width, and let's give it 5 pixels. And let's also add border style, and let's say I want it to be solid, which is just our simple border. And if I save and refresh, you can see that now I have these borders on my boxes, and the width of them is 5 pixels. And as you can tell, the color of the borders is the color that we selected for our text, and you can easily change this. So let's say I don't want it to be the same. What I can do is I can type in border color, and so let's say I want it to be purple. I save it and I refresh, and now we have purple borders and our light coral text. And we can do this whole thing with just one line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in border style. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write border, I'm going to write 5 pixels, and then solid and purple. And so let's delete this as we don't need it now, and let's save, refresh, and here we go. We have the same exact result with just one line. And our border style property has a couple values. So some of them are dotted, dashed, double, groove, ridge, inset and outset. And so let's try the dashed version. So the dashed value, and let's save, refresh, and as you can see, my borders are now sort of dashed. And so as you can see, the edges are sharp, so it's like a rectangle. Let's say I want some of them to be curved, or even all of them to be curved. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write the property border radius, and I want it to be 10 pixels. And let's save, refresh, and we can see that our edges for our box are now circled and they're using 10 pixels. And what we can do is we can also right click on our page, click on inspect, and we can change this value to, let's say, 40px, and that's border radius 10px, and let's change it to 40. Here we go. As you can see, we have way more circle text, and let's keep it at a healthy amount, so 15 pixels for example. So let's say I only want one of my edges to be curved. What I have to do is, let's just add in, I want the top right edge to be curved. I just type in top right with these lines, so it should have a structure like this. And let's save, refresh, and as you can see, these three sides are not curved and this side is. So let's add the value a little bit so you can see it better, and here we go. As you can see, top right is curved. And next, let's say I want the bottom left to be curved as well. Let's duplicate this and let's change top left for bottom left. Save and refresh, and as you can see, we now have the top right and bottom left edges curved. So let's add a background image on top of our background color. So what we do is we type in background colon URL 2 brackets single quotation marks, and this is the link of my picture, so I'll be using this. You can use any picture that you like, and let's save it, refresh, and as you can see, this is now my picture. And let's open up this structure again, and as you can see, background color is before background image. So this background image is on top of our background color, which was gray if you remember. So next, let's add in some padding. So type in padding and let's write left colon and let's write 40 pixel. So this means that we'll get 40 pixels added space. And so let's save, refresh. And so as you can see, we just got a padding. So this means that 40 pixels were added to our original width. And so let's add a padding top as well. So change left with top. And so basically, this is 40 pixels added to our height. So our height is 300. So 40 pixels is added to 300. So if I save and refresh, for our height, it's 340 pixels to be exact. And for our width, it's 240. My width is 200. So let's comment on these. And let's put the opening comment over here. Here we go. And let's write padding, colon, and just 40 pixels. This means that from every side, 40 pixels will be added. And as you can see, my second box moved down to the bottom as 40 pixels were just added from each side. And so let's make this bigger. And we can add padding. And we can add padding from all of its sides by just writing, let's say 40 pixels, and this is from the top. Let's say we want 10 from the right, so we write 10 pixels, and we don't want any from the bottom, so we write 0, and from the left we want 70 pixels. So this is its order: top, right, bottom, and left. So let's save, refresh, and as you can see, we now have 40 pixels from the top, 10 pixels from the right, 0 from the bottom, and 70 from the left. And we can do the same thing with the margins as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to comment on the margin properties in the top section. So in this section, let's just comment on these as we don't need them. And let's write margin here. And let's write 50 pixels, 30 pixels, 0 and 30 pixels again. And let's change this one to 70. So this is top right, bottom left. 50 is top, 70 is right, 0 is bottom, and 30 is left. So let's save. And essentially we get our values on our web page. And once again, using the inspect element, we can change the values of, let's say, the margin, and it's exactly the same thing. It highlights parts of your value, and let's say I want the 0 to be 10. Here we go. And this is just random. You can mess about with this and just try to have a better understanding of it by yourself. Let's close out of this. Let's go back to our file. So let's get rid of this second div, save and refresh, as we don't really need it anymore. And let's comment on the float left. We don't need it. And let's also comment on this last margin. We don't need it. And let's write margin 0 and auto. So when we save and refresh, save, refresh, our div came to the center of our web page, as you can notice on my web page. We have to have this float property deleted, and we have to have the margin with the value 0 auto. So next, let's open up the inspect aspect again, and let's go to our margin. Let me make my window a little bit bigger. Let's go to margin. Let's make it to 60 pixels. So this means that the space from the top and bottom is 60 pixels. And also in our code, let's just make this a little bit smaller. We can make this 0 to 20%. And if I save, refresh, so this is 20% of my web page's height. And we can change it to 30 pixels. Save, refresh, and so we can add 40 pixels. So this is 30 pixels from the top and 40 pixels from the bottom. And so as you can see, it's two values. And to add in a right and left, we just have to add in a value in the middle of these two values. So let's say I want it to be 80 pixels, for example. This means that it's 30 pixels from the top, 80 from right and left, and 40 from the bottom. Save, refresh, and as you can see, from the right and left there's 80 pixels, and from the bottom there's 40, and there's 30 from the top. So yeah, that was it for today. Thank you so much for watching. See you during my next tutorial.